Councilmember Marjorie Molina in the city of Charlotte, Councilmember Felina Harris of Troutman, Councilmember Jamie Hamill of Meisenhower. I'll be appointing two at-large members. Those terms will begin in April. As a reminder, all county delegates, city of Charlotte delegates, and the plan committee co-chair will continue to serve on the executive board for 2024. We hope everyone will embrace this opportunity to continue their service to the region and the organization in the coming year. As a reminder, executive board meetings are held in person with a virtual option. We encourage you to be here in person, but it is more important that we have your participation regardless of the format. This meeting is being recorded as a community server. To facilitate visual participation, all delegates attending both virtually and in person are asked to state their name before making a motion, second, voting, or posing a question or comment. Because we have delegates attending both in person and remotely, not at the same time, but I'd like the board administrator to call the roll so everyone is aware of who's present and we can establish a quorum. Names will be called in alphabetical order. I'll now ask Nerissa to call the roll.
Patty Crump. Kevin Devaney. Martha Sue Hall. I'm sorry. Jamie Hamill. Here. Felina Harris. Brian Helms.
Here.
Daryl Tennant. Gene Howe. Bob Hovis. Cynthia Lewis Lemon.
Present.
Jamie Lineberger. Tony Long.
Here.
Jay McCosh.
Here.
Marjorie Molina. Elaine Powell.
Arthur Griffin sitting in for Elaine Powell.
Thank you. Sean Rush.
Present.
David Scholl. Lynn Shu.
Here.
Jennifer Stepp. Here. Jennifer T. Here. Jarvis Wilburn.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. Our board administrator confirmed that we do have a quorum. So moving right along, now let's please stand and recite the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So there are no amendments to the March 13th, 2024 executive board meeting agenda. So now we'll move on to items 1 and 2, which are on the consent agenda. The consent agenda tonight includes 2 items. One is the approval of the January 10th executive board meeting minutes. Second is a resolution for support of Centralina's application to the North Carolina Department of Transportation fiscal year 2025 public transportation funding program. Are there any comments on the consent agenda?
Move it be approved as presented.
Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Moving right along. Now we move down to item 3. This year we will continue, which is the Centralina Spotlight. We're going to continue to spotlight one of Centralina's programs at the start of each of our executive board meetings. It's a great opportunity to continue to build our knowledge of what Centralina does and how its programs, services, and activities support our local government cities. Today, the focus is on our aging department and the family caregiver support program. After this short video, Cindy Kincaid, Centralina's Aging Department's Family Caregiver Program Manager, will answer any questions or concerns that you may have. Oh, Debbie's here. Okay. Let me Debbie pops in. Sorry.
It wouldn't be a meeting without a technical difficulty. Right?
This month, our spotlight is on Centralina's Family Caregiver Support Program, led by our Centralina Area Agency on Aging team. This work supports Centralina's mission to improve quality of life for our region's residents through support and services that allow caregivers to care for their loved ones for as long as possible. The Family Caregiver Support Program was established to educate, support, and uplift our region's unpaid family caregivers so they can keep both their care recipient and themselves healthy, happy, and stress-free. Centralina Area Agency on Aging delivers these services directly and in partnership with contracted providers across the region. All services are provided on a short-term basis. Services include information about local resources available, assistance connecting to community services, training and support groups to foster relationships with other caregivers, respite care through in-home aid services, adult daycare centers, or residential facilities, and supplemental services, such as equipment, devices, or supplies to support one's ability to remain in their community. In order to qualify for assistance from the program, caregivers must fall into one of the categories listed on screen. For respite and supplemental services, the care recipient must also meet the definition of frail, which means they need assistance with at least 2 daily living activities. Examples include eating, bathing, dressing, using the restroom, and moving around in the home or in their community. In addition to direct services, the Family Caregiver Support Program also offers educational opportunities for caregivers. Building Better Caregivers is a 6-week evidence-based program that teaches caregivers how to manage stress that comes with the caregiver role, along with tools and skills they can use to help care for their loved one for as long as possible. Our team also helps facilitate regular virtual support groups that allow caregivers to share their stories and struggles with other caregivers in a safe space. Trained leaders guide conversations and are able to provide extra resources and support so caregivers feel understood and appreciated for the work they do. Centralina Area Agency on Aging also provides online learning opportunities through partnerships with Get Set Up and Trualta. Both platforms offer learning libraries with interactive video programming that teach caregivers new skills they can utilize in their role caring for a loved one and in their personal life experiences. Recently, a regional caregiver named Shirley reached out to Centralina Area Agency on Aging for caregiving assistance for her husband, Melvin, as she was struggling in her role as a full-time caregiver to get her husband to shower and run errands outside the home. Family Caregiver Program leaders walked through the standard procedures of initial assessment and eligibility check with the couple and determined what services would be most beneficial. The team was able to connect the couple with an in-home caregiver that has been able to help Melvin with regular bathing and helping him attend appointments, like haircuts and doctor's visits. This service also allowed Shirley a much-needed break from her regular caregiving duties to do things that she enjoys. If you are interested in learning more about the Family Caregiver Support Program and to see if our services can help you or someone you know, please reach out to Program Manager Cindy Kincaid.
All right, thanks. All right, and now we'll have Debbie Lee come up. Are you going to talk?
My name is Debbie Lee, and I'm one of the assistant directors in the aging department here. Linda Miller is our director, and Kate Kutcher is the other assistant. And they are currently in Washington with Cindy Kincaid at a National Legislative Advocacy Day for area agencies on aging. So I'm your pinch hitter this evening to answer any questions that you might have had about the video or about how caregiving might impact you in your community.
Any questions?
No, just Mr. Chair, just a comment. And we have some new faces, but not a lot of new faces, but a lot newer than me. But this is the particular division of COG that touches everybody. And when I was first elected a county commissioner 30 years ago, when that was my love, was knowing that we were taking care of our senior citizens. And basically it was any way that the aging touched them. But we are a graying community and a graying region, not just me, but all of us are graying. But we're aging in a positive manner. And this is going to be such a needed service. So to each of you, yeah, Chris, you're graying too, aren't you?
I am.
So we all need to make sure we understand what area aging can do for the least and for the folks that really need it. So I'm thrilled. This is fabulous because people want to be home.
Thank you so much. Just one little thing that each of you should know is that we do that in partnership with the local providers in your particular communities. So every county has their own caregiver that is funded through the Older Americans Act support program, and we assist them in making sure that those funds go as far as they can to the most in need. And then we also assist them in sort of filling any type of gaps or making connections that the particular county may not be able to accomplish due to restrictions in creative funding, let's say. You know, some counties are a little reluctant to do a little outside the box sort of things. And if they are restricted anyway, then we can collaborate with them and try to get that caregiver the kinds of things that they need. The last little thing that I would mention, because I'm sure that you guys hear this all the time, is how do I, as a family member, get paid to care for my loved one? Because obviously it's very expensive to connect with an in-home service agency, those kinds of things. And while this is a short-term service, it is consumer directed. And what that means is that individuals can choose anyone they want to be the person who provides respite care for them. We make sure that that person is certainly not a violent criminal or, or those kind of things, but it really is up to the individual to make that selection. Sometimes they choose an agency and they use their budgeted funds for that, but often they choose someone that they know and trust. A neighbor, a friend, a church person, somebody that they've been in service with before in other clubs and organizations, and often a family member. So it can not necessarily be someone they live with, but it needs to be somebody outside the home. But that is an important part of it because, as Martha Sue's pointed out, part of what we do as Aging Gracefully is making sure that we have choice to live where we want to, how we want to, and with whom we want to. And this program, in a very small way, helps make that possible throughout our whole region. So thanks for letting us spotlight tonight.
Thank you. Any other questions? Comments? All right, well, thanks, David.
Anytime.
All right, now, moving right along. We're gonna move on to item 4. Now I'll call on Geraldine Dorner, Centralina Executive Director, to introduce the next item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Tonight is our first executive board meeting of our new executive board for 2024. So I wanted to do a brief orientation and just give you all a forecast of what's ahead for our meetings for this year and where we will be leaning into your expertise and guidance as we carry out our duties and responsibilities. But before we jump into that, wanted just to go around and do a round of introductions. We've got some new faces. We have some folks online so that we all know who's in the room and you all know who our staff is that are here to support you. So, Mr. Chairman, we'll go around in a circle. We'll go on Zoom and then we'll do staff.
All right, well, I'm Jay McCosh, current chairman and the council member in the town of McCaster.
I'm Lynn Shue. I'm Vice Chairman, Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners.
I'm Chris Carney, Mayor for the town of Mooresville, and I think kind of filling in, but certainly may come my way more often. So I appreciate it. I was looking to notice that we don't send somebody enough, so I'll definitely make sure this stays on the calendar. Thank you.
I'm Jamie Hamill, council member for the Village of Meisenheimer.
Martha Sue Hall, Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Albemarle.
Jennifer Stapp, City Council, Gastonia.
Jarvis Whitburn, Commissioner, Anson County. Tony Long, Commissioner, Mayhew.
Jennifer Teague, Mayor of the town of Harrisburg.
And we'll go to our Zoom room. Commissioner Griffin, can you get us started?
Yes, my name's Arthur Griffin. I serve as County Commissioner at Large here in Mecklenburg County. I also chair the Public Health and Human Services Committee of the board.
All right, and why doesn't our Zoom room pick the next person to introduce themselves since we can't see you?
Hi, I'm Alderman Sean Rush from the town of East Spencer.
Anybody else?
Hey, this
Francie?
Hi, I'm Corinthia Lewis Lemon, Councilwoman from Town of Morgan.
is Brian Helms, Vice Chair of Union County Board of Commissioners.
Welcome, Commissioner. All right, so we also have our fabulous staff in the room. So I'm going to go this way, starting with Jason.
Good evening. I'm Jason Wager. I'm the Regional Planning Director.
Kelly Weston, Government Affairs and Member Engagement Administrator.
Good evening, Michelle Nance, Deputy Executive Director.
Hello, Christina Dennis. I'm Director of Community Economic Development.
Hello, Denise Strasser, Finance Director.
Hi, Marissa Claiborne, Board Administrator.
I think we got everybody. Okay. And my roll for all right, so when we all caucused in February about who is going to represent municipalities on the executive board, we briefly reviewed these slides. I'm just going to go through them one more time to emphasize a few points. So our executive board is really the group of elected officials and delegates that we work as staff most closely with. You're a decision maker on important items of business, which we'll go over in a moment. You're a collaborator, giving us guidance and feedback on our program of work in a much more intensive way than when we only meet the board of delegates 4 times a year. We consider you all networkers. So when we have those larger board of delegates meetings, making sure that we have representation from across the region, helping to secure folks' participation in those meetings. And then lastly, being an advocate for Centralina and our region as we work with our state and federal partners. So just to dive in a little deeper, if I wave my hand, there we go. All right, so on decision maker, a couple of forecast items for all of you. We don't have a budget amendment coming this meeting, but one will be in April. Denise and I are going to work to put those in front of you on a more consistent basis. But contracts and agreements come before the board for items over 50,000 in local dollars or 200 in state or federal dollars. This is for the receipt of funds or the expenditure of funds. So there's an item on the agenda tonight that you'll hear about in a moment that falls under this purview. Our policies and procedures go through this board. And in April, you'll have our next fiscal year compensation policy in front of you. And lastly, the executive board reviews and approves the audit, which comes in November. In your collaborator role, we work with the executive board closely on our annual work plan development. So we'll be engaging in that more intensively in May and June. We also will be using these meetings to have more what we call in focus discussions. We'll present a topic and ask for some engagement and guidance from all of you on how we approach a specific issue. Next month's meeting, we'll be focusing in on the sustainability of funding for our aging programs. So that will be a topic of conversation. We'll focus on transportation and mobility and advocacy in future meetings. As our networker and an advocate role, again, helping us make sure we have good attendance and participation in our board of delegates meetings. It could be things like offering a carpool or helping if we've got someone who hasn't shown up to a couple of meetings, helping us make some calls, really finding out what the barriers or blocks are so that we can address that. And then on the state and federal advocacy, you'll hear an update tonight on Raleigh relations. April will focus on federal issues. But again, sort of as much as you are willing and interested in participating in those advocacy meetings and of course, giving us guidance on our agenda. In terms of meeting topics, just a quick forecast. I already mentioned quite a few things related to the April meeting. June will be a in focus conversation on our small towns program, kind of a recap and assessment of the impact of that work. We'll also present to you our next fiscal year work plan and an update on state and federal relations. There's also lots of other fun stuff that gets added to the mix, but here and now today, this is what I can tell you is at least going to be in focus. September is more on the infrastructure side with digital inclusion, as well as a more in-depth briefing on advancing the plan and our mobility work. And then in November, we'll turn to advocacy planning, the upcoming long session and new congressional session, as well as the audit and nominating committee. So feels like the year is going to go by quickly, as it always does. In terms of the Board of Delegates, the larger meetings with the full board, as we say, May will have an open house. So continue to build everyone's knowledge of who we are and what we do at Centralina. We're going to be having an in-depth conversation on housing. This will be an interactive discussion. We'll present to you some data. We'll be engaging you all in some key discussion questions and allowing some space for you all to hear from each other. And then in August, it will be a similar format, but the topic will be water infrastructure. And we'll wrap up the year of our Board of Delegates with our annual celebration and Region of Excellence Award ceremony, as well as the annual report. So that is what we have on tap. It's going to be a full year. But any questions on the role of the executive board, your responsibilities, and what we have ahead on our meeting agendas?
So the meeting dates, just wondering.
That's right. The meeting dates are incorrect. Page 19, they all are probably 2 days off.
The meeting date on my slide or the meeting date?
The meeting date on the packet that's going home with these folks.
You know, that's what happens when I do a save as on last year's.
It's okay. I would
apologize.
be the person. Thank you. Thank you, Jarvis, for bringing, but now I was looking at that stuff. Yeah, so.
Yes, we will correct that and send that out. My apologies about that, moving a little too fast.
It's okay.
Yes. Very good.
Anything else? All right, thanks, Jolene, although you're up in here for a second. So now we'll move on to item 5, which is the Timber Road Extension Agreement. So for this item, I'm going to call on Geraldine to present the background and recommendations. However, first I want to recognize Mayor Chris Carney is here at Mooresville, and he will be available as a resource in case the board has any additional questions following the presentation.
Geraldine, proud and appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. All right, so there's probably a good majority of your packet is background information on this project. So I'm just going to hit some of the highlights. And then we can get into specific questions. The item before you this evening is a request to accept a directed grant from the North Carolina General Assembly routed through the Office of State Budget and Management in the amount of $15 million. And that will be used to support the development of a piece of infrastructure in Iredell County known as the Timber Road Extension. So a couple of key facts that you can see on the screen here, just a location map. The sort of dotted box is the general location in Mooresville. The mayor will certainly know this much more than I will. But what Timber Road does is it connects really 2 important north-south roads that run in the Lake Norman area through Mooresville, Highway 21 and Highway 115. I live in this part of the region, so I know how busy it can get and how very few connections east-west there are. So this Timber Road extension has been, to my understanding, on the city's list of improvements for some time. It is a necessary connector. And the development project that will build this property or this extension. You can see a site plan here. This was, we received this from the town as part of the development agreement between the developer and the town of Mooresville to construct this multi-phase development property program, as well as build the Timber Road extension. So the $15 million grant, just back up one, the majority of it will be subawarded if you approve this evening from Centralina to the development group that is responsible for this property, M Group Companies, also known as LNR Development LLC, to fund the Timber Road extension. Centralina will retain $140,000 for grant administration and subaward administration of the project. So our role will be to ensure that the project is built to the town of Mooresville standards as outlined in the development agreement that the town and the developer have already come to terms on. So we are we are riding over their agreement to make sure that the road is built. And that the town eventually will accept it into its inventory. And as you all in your localities do with development agreements when developers are building infrastructure on behalf of your town. So in order to ensure that the funds are being spent to the right purposes and to the highest degree of integrity, we are proposing that part of the subaward structure that Centralina develops with the developers, that we have certain controls and purview over how this project eventually unfolds. So on the plus side, there's already a lot of structure in place with how the town and the developer have certain milestones in place. So we would be replicating those milestones in our subaward agreement. My recommendation to the board is that we pursue one of these methods of payment. I advise against just turning over the full amount to the developer. There are three options you could pursue. A reimbursement contract in which we pay, we fully reimburse up to that amount once the road is delivered. Partial payment, so that could be an initial payment up front and then final payment upon delivery, or a payment schedule that would allow the payments to be drawn down over time. That's the main sort of area, I think, of control that we have. Everything else will mirror in the town's agreement, just to make sure that it is consistent and the expectations are clear and consistent with the developer. There's some other things we could put into the subaward that I just put out there for board's consideration. Use of disadvantaged businesses. There is some language from the Department of Transportation about using a DVE system or for subawards, or potentially even using our workforce board for hiring needs. But I think that the bulk of where I need your guidance is regarding the payment. So I believe that is my last slide. But I'm happy to answer any questions or defer to Mayor about more specifics related to the proposal itself.
If you go back to the
Yes, sir.
previous slide. Which, and this is Tony from me here, which of the methods of payment do you prefer? I like 2 or 3, but not 1. What is your preference?
One from the top.
Yes.
I think from an administrative standpoint, the more we can tie performance to payment, the better. So I think that would be how I would approach it.
If you don't mind, from Mooresville, 2 or 3 also make the most sense to us, if you wouldn't mind. Yeah.
Corinthia Lewis Lemon. Hi. I know you did the 3, and I think the third one is what, a payment schedule?
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like a payment schedule, and this is just my theory because of the fact that, and Mr. Odine, a lot that I've dealt with when it comes down to where we're at. I feel like 3 would be the best because with that's a payment schedule, and then you never know what that person's going to do. You give them half up front, and they might not do half of the work. And then at the end, when it's time for them to get everything done, it's like, oh, I want my money. So I really think a payment schedule will be good because then they're going to work for that money. But that's just my suggestion.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
I would agree with the payment schedule. That's a little bit of incentive there, I think, to do a good job and
Mayor Pro Tem Hall.
This is the devil in the detail. Why is COG even getting involved in this? And it's nothing against town of Mooresville. If it were, I mean, why is COG even in the middle of this? Number one. Why is the money, if there was going to be a direct allocation from the General Assembly, why was the town of Mooresville not given it? Number two. Number three, how is it that it comes to us with already a bid, I mean, with a developer or a recipient of these funds already stamped and everything else? Number three. And four.
Hmm.
No, I'm just throwing it out there, guys, because this is the historian, okay? I mean, Debbie's not even here and she's been here as long as I have, okay? And when I saw that this was here, I'm thinking, wait a minute, why are we doing this? This is not COG's responsibility when it's just throwing it back to one. So I am real skeptical. The fourth thing, and Marissa, I hope somebody got those or wrote those comments down, because I think we can't just pass this off. Guys, we can't and this is just the old school, but the fourth one is, did our attorney look at all of this, and who is our attorney of record right now? Because guys, if we get into accepting from the General Assembly, it doesn't look right, it doesn't smell right. And it's scary for me as somebody that's been around so long. And I will shut up, but I think those questions need to be answered.
So I'll do my best to answer them as best I can. So there has been in previous budgets, a use of councils of government across the state to support the execution of specific projects through directed grants for the General Assembly. So there's a housing project in the Cape Fear region, and I think another housing project in the Lumber River region. So on the positive side, I think there are members of the General Assembly that see councils of government as problem solvers to facilitate infrastructure and projects in their regions. So I reviewed the project against our charter. There's nothing in this project that's inconsistent with our responsibilities as an organization. There's nothing in our charter that prevents us from accepting directed grants from the General Assembly. I think there could probably be a separate discussion around the sort of the politics of this. It's sort of above my pay grade. But the fact of the matter is that when we had a conversation with the Office of State Budget and Management, when they approached us, there's hundreds of millions of dollars of directed grants that their office has to manage from the budget. And there was no legislated policy on how organizations have to respond. So in your question around why this project, how can we pick this developer? There's nothing in state policy that says we have to do an RFP to spend this money. This is sort of what the rules in which we're operating under. So I think this is an important opportunity for our organization to support one of our communities. We are compensated for our time to make sure it's done correctly, ethically, and efficiently. And our attorney has not given us any opinion to say that we can't proceed in doing this. So it's a question of the board's discretion as to whether or not you want to authorize us to accept these funds.
So my follow-up to that would be, so it sounds like, and Chris, you may have a better take on this than I. It sounds like that this money may have been allocated as a direct gift or a direct allocation to a specific developer.
So
And if that is in fact it,
that's not it.
okay, well, that's what it sounds like to
So
me.
if you allow me, so essentially, obviously, I took over December 4th, and I will also speak to the fact of, some of you who know in the past, I did serve in the General Assembly, so I was not involved in asking for this money, okay, just so that everybody knows that. But I was very thankful when I found out it was, because essentially what you have here is when towns, obviously, as we know, are trying to, as development's coming, we're trying to figure out how to get the most maximized dollars from the developer. Occasionally, we ask for too much, right? And in this case, we asked for a connection trunk line between two of our major highways because it's greatly needed, as Generally said, and it makes a massive difference. The General Assembly also saw that as something that was greatly needed and wanted to find a way in order to help move that project along. In this case, it just happened the vehicle was already in place because there was a developer already taking down the land, which got us out of the having to go condemn property in order to do it. So what we had was a actual picture perfect opportunity to get out of getting in the land purchasing part, just getting in the road building part. And that allowed us to go in. And I would actually, in all due respect, we've been knowing each other a long time. The other thing I would throw out is I think this is a great opportunity for COG to be involved in moving towns and cities forward. I think it shows the value of what this organization does bring to the table. And I for one, am very thankful that actually the General Assembly thought of a COG in this particular way, because I think it gives us something that when we think about our membership, how it's something we can talk about how well this could work. And it has worked around the state. And so I was surprised when I saw it, but I was pleasantly surprised. And I thought that COG really filled a very necessary piece to this. And that's kind of how we got to where we are.
So
If that makes some sense.
go ahead.
Yeah, Jennifer T, Town of Harrisburg. So what happens to the money if you say no?
Goes back to Raleigh.
Yeah, it reverts back.
But it feels like it's earmarked specifically for this project. So I guess I'm hung up on why the direct allocation wasn't just given to the town. I mean, because we've got shovel-ready projects in Harrisburg that we go through with grants and things too. So why was that just not given to the town of Morrisville? I don't understand why we're lumped, why we're in the middle of it, I guess.
Hey, this is Brian Helms. I'm sorry, can everybody hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Brian Helms, Union County. I will say that, and I think that most of the veteran board members know that Martha Sue and I don't always agree, but I actually had some of the same questions, and Martha Sue, you know that too. But I actually had some of the same questions that she brought up. The other question I have is who made this initial request? Was it the developer or was it the town of Mooresville?
I can tell you, Commissioner, it was not Centralina. And the origin story of the request, I am not familiar with. I don't know, Mayor, if you are aware.
It was made together, and I think that as we all know, if it had come to us, it is a much more complicated process than a developer who has boots on the ground already and already moving dirt. So really, this is the most cost-effective way to get that road system in. The numbers would just go, all of us who are in the business of building roads realize it gets more expensive when we take it over than we get to have a road built for us and given to us. And so it was just the timing wise, especially with the cost of just everything we touch now going up. We're currently working on the east-west connector, and we started off at 20-something million and we just finished out at 38 million, which obviously had a lot of grants put into it as well as private money. So this was just an opportunity to do it for the quickest and least amount of money. And again, we're thankful for that. So it was a conjunction of the two. We were happy to get it and we supported the request.
I still don't understand why there's a third layer of checks and balances with this.
So what I was told by the Morrisville town manager is that there was in a previous budget cycle, the town had received a directed grant for a similar project. I don't think it was a road construction, but it was a similar sort of improvement on private property. And it was the town's attorney that said it was not eligible. They were not able to receive the grant.
That was a sinkhole. So to be fair to y'all, we now have to, in order to use the money, have to buy the sinkhole. So when I said, and if it will, and I apologize, because I think this does make it a little, with us being in between managers and obviously we have interviews the next couple of days, some of this has haven't been directed by our upper management staff. So we've had to kind of, move a little bit with that, but there's no question. Our attorney has discomfort with us using public money on private land. And obviously, so it's causing us to buy a building and a sinkhole as we speak. So that's why, again, y'all are a savior in this and we're very thankful for it.
I think had the town not supported this, had this road been a small right-of-way on a private development site and not a major connector, I think there'd probably be some additional flags for us.
If I might, one more that I think is important. Because of the cost of the road going up, the other way to do this was for them to dedicate that land to us to build it, as you can imagine. And now we're responsible for the overages. In this case, we have a flat, us, the state, everybody involved have a flat involvement. Anything over that, the developer will have to put in themselves. So it capped our risk. They just now owe us a road. And that's why, again, you going through the payment schedule, I think is great. Because at the end of the day, the goal is to get the road built. And if you picked item one, they could just say, well, we're just not going to do it and we'll let the money revert and we'll all walk away. Whereas if we do a payment schedule, they're more incentivized to keep moving because they're not having to put out 15, 16 million and wait for it to come back. So that's another great piece of this.
I don't think anybody's arguing the necessity or
Yeah, for
need
sure.
for it. I'm still really not clear on why COG is involved in this. I just don't understand why this third party oversight.
Yeah, Brian Helms.
It's being required because it's, if we don't approve it, it goes back, they don't get it. So what? There's gotta be a reason that there's this third layer in there.
There may be a rule on the General Assembly's budgetary side that prevents them from making that direct earmark. I don't know if that's the case, but that could be, it could be their own rules and how they do the Appropriations Act if that's something that the board wants us to follow up on, we're happy to do that. But that might be a block on their side.
Hey, Brian Helms, Union County. Mr. Mayor, if I understand correctly, and I just want to make sure that I've got the right comprehension here, but you said that there are no further easements to be acquired with this project, that, under the conditions that we're looking at, that there would be no easements that have to be acquired by the town of Morris, correct?
I can't remember. I think the railroad has a little bit of something that they're responsible for, but the vast majority of the land is controlled by them, which is helpful in this project. But I do think if you're asking me specifically, now remember, I inherited this project a little bit, but I believe my memory is that there's maybe a little bit of working with around the railroad. Norfolk Southern, all of us know is Norfolk Southern, right? So I think that is always an interesting conversation for anybody. Again, I'm thankful that we're going to put that on the developer and not on us, because that's a difficult conversation regardless. And usually requires us closing crossings and all kinds of
There's
stuff.
a railroad crossing on Highway 115 here. That's part of their agreement that they have when they built the road.
They were responsible for building it anyway.
According to get the development entitlements for the town of Mooresville, they have to build this road in order for this property to be developed as it's shown here.
And when you when you look at it, obviously, the whole time, there's nobody in their right mind who looks at that and says, yes, that makes sense to make a developer build that massive infrastructure back and forth. So it was always in conjuncture. And I'll tell you, just to somebody serve the general assembly, from the point of the House is much more comfortable with the way these things go in grants. The Senate is a much more difficult, animal. I love Phil Berger. Phil has his ways of doing business, right? And sometimes I think those things are just even in the mechanism of each body, that they feel more comfortable when they're not like a direct town appropriation to a road. The Senate has a much more strict road funding. It usually likes to be attached to an economic development project of some kind or to something like this. So I would feel comfortable in saying, I'm sure that had something to do with it as well. Our sinkhole money was like $1.5 million, and it also was very vague in how it came through, if that makes some sense.
This is Lynn's shoe for those that's on the audio there. My little 2 cents worth. Anytime you get free money, it's good. I mean, that's how we look at it. Cabarrus County's point of view. We have grants and things like that to come in, and especially when there's no match or anything. But I do have one concern, and Geraldine, you touched on it a little bit, and that is just like Mayor Teague and Martha Sue. This is not traditional for college to do roads. To my knowledge, we don't do roads. We do economic development and workforce development and all of those things, but we don't do roads. We hadn't been anyway, and I've only been on this thing for 3 or 4 years, 5 years at the most. But that's one thing. And then, do we want to get involved in oversight for roads? And to what extent is our liability for doing this? And do you have the personnel on staff now to cover the oversight? Do we have to hire more people?
So those are great questions, Commissioner. I think the advantage that we have is that we are not constructing this road. The town of Mooresville is overseeing the construction because the developer has to deliver this road in order to get their entitlements. So we are watching them watch the construction. So from a liability standpoint, we will be writing this subaward agreement such to limit our liability because the developer is delivering for the town. The town will certify whether or not the road meets DOT standards and all of that. We will only release the funds once that certification has been received. So none of our staff have to be out there doing the inspections or learning that expertise because the town is doing that. And if we do this in partnership and we structure the awards, the contracts appropriately, then we can work in partnership without us having to bear additional liability risk or staff to have to oversee this. I think it would be an entirely different situation if it was a road where there was no town and we didn't have a partnership, then I would not want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. But we are doing more mobility. We are thinking about how do we support our local governments with grant administration. So I think there's a good parallel to the role that we would play in a grant administration and an overseeing type of role than if we were working with a town on an infrastructure project for water and sewer. So it's just a different piece of infrastructure and, partnership that we have with the town to make sure it's done well.
We did a couple of years ago a project similar to this, where we had a developer. All he wanted us to do was to do a tilt for the road, to get the road from point A to point B to spark the economic development, which is what you're gonna see.
That's right.
A lot of economic development because of this road.
That's what I was
We
about to
didn't
say,
have a
too.
grant. This guy had, developer had the money. We just give him one of those, what you call a TIF. You're familiar with
I am,
TIFs.
yes, sir.
And the road got built, the structure.
Goodness.
different COGs throughout the entire state. So we felt like, okay, this is a great opportunity for Mooresville. For us to help for us to, as much infrastructure and things that we were trying to do. We get $140,000 that we wouldn't have had otherwise, which is great to be able to oversee it. And so, as we sat there, I said, okay, we all kind of agreed that we could either embrace this or kind of reject it. And so we flipped the coin and said, hey, okay, what if we did embrace it? They're gonna start sending things like this anyway. We would have a little much more control. Said, okay, that's all well and good. But we want, as an admin fee, we want more than this percentage. We're gonna want more and see what kind of projects, see how we can help other communities to get things done quicker, to spar this infrastructure. So let's just talk, we were just talking about that and there's possibilities down the road. And we make a lot of good friends in Raleigh who will love us for that and hopefully send more grants our way. So that was kind of our discussion that we were thinking. And so after that, we're like, well, not all bad. Mayor?
Just, Martha Sue again, if you'll pay attention to page 34 of your packet, I think this shows some history. And it goes back, talks about the original $15 million. That background in October of 22 about the Mooresville Town Board approved the plan development. Then you go back to page 41 of your packet, and it is the develop agreement that was filed within Iredell County Register of Deeds office on or about the 19th day of January of 23. So we're talking now 14 months later. This has been in the plans for a while. I mean, with these specific players. I love it that the General Assembly wants to put COGS up on not a pedestal, but use us instead of a third layer of government. Jennifer, I love that analogy because that's been thrown back in our face in the past. Why do y'all want to get involved? Y'all are just another level of government, okay? Trust me, when I've gone to the General Assembly, that's what people have said about COGS. And then now all of a sudden, because it's beneficial to somebody, ultimately it's going to be beneficial to folks in Mooresville. And I understand that.
correct.
I understand that. I guess, and a change is hard, but just something still got me wrong. I think I might feel better if I knew who and where those other COGS were and what those other direct allocations were to COGS with specific, as COG being a third party. I think I might feel better if I had something like that to reference it to. However, with all of that said, then I go back into the packet and look at the timeline, and we're really tight on the timeline because it alleges that, with the 15th, which is Friday, there's going to be, we are to get back with Raleigh and tell them what we're doing, et cetera, et cetera. Part of me wants to offer a motion to table this, but I don't want to formally make that motion because I know in parliamentary procedures, if I do that, then that just supersedes everything. And I will not make that motion, and I'm not gonna say another word, but these are things that just keep popping out to me. And Jay, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, respectfully say, I know what it's like to be in your position there. And we don't want to I was going to use some other phrase, but I decided not to. We don't want to make the General Assembly mad. We don't want to hurt more. But this is the first that we are hearing about this. This is the first time we've seen it on an agenda. And this is big time. We're going to be setting a precedent for Centralina, which may or may not have already been said other places, okay? But this is the first time we've seen this officially. So I'll shut up now and let you all, I've planted the seeds.
Mr. Chairman, if I might say one more.
Yeah.
I'll repeat what I said earlier. I think this is a fantastic place for COG to find itself. I think that anytime I can go back and tell my board what a relevant piece COG played in anything, whether it's for us, whether it's for, you pick where we're talking about. I think that is I hope this isn't a first step. I hope that y'all continue to push the General Assembly to do more of this, because I think it's good for all of us. And I know for one, when I speak to my General Assembly members, I'm going to tell them that I think was a great step. And I think that it's a great step for this organization as a member of it. And if it wasn't us and it was anybody else in the room, I would still be saying that same thing. I think this is a really great move in a great direction as somebody who's been involved with COG going back to 2005.
Mr. Chairman, if it would be appropriate with you and acceptable by the board, I would make a motion that we approve this grant.
Second.
Already got a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Hey,
No.
Hold on, we gotta do that.
Can I do a voice vote?
Yeah, you need to do the voice vote.
I'll just say your name.
Yeah.
Okay, from
Jennifer T.
Jennifer T, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay,
That's a no. Yes.
okay. I'll call in order. Arthur Supal? No. Jamie? Yes. Yes. Brian Helms?
no,
Corinthia Lewis Lemon?
I'm sorry, no.
Tony Long?
Yes.
Jay McCosh?
Yes.
Sean Rush?
Yes.
Lynn Shu?
Yes.
Jennifer Stapp? No? No. Jarvis Woodburn?
Yes.
And the alternate sitting in for Elaine Powell?
Commissioner Griffin,
Yes.
Yes, I did. The yeses have it by one.
Yep, they got it wrong one.
I suggest that now that the motion passes.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, and Geraldine, go to the next steps.
so, I recognize there was a lot of thought into this, and I really appreciate the thoughtful discussion. We will get back to you, Martha Sue Hall, with the other COGS examples, so we'll follow up on that. The subaward draft will come back before you in April, so that you can see how we're mitigating risk and addressing some of the issues that you have surfaced today.
You add the why, like I think for me, I still haven't heard why this is how they're handling it.
We will.
Like, what's that direct, is that something new that they're trying? Is it because they're too bogged down? Like what, I just need a why.
And I can't speak for everybody, but from what most people said here, I don't think it's that people don't want this to happen in
That's right.
Morrisville. I think it's just that we had this thrown at us and we don't have questions answered. And so if this is going to be the way we go forward, we're going to need more information sooner and some of these questions answered.
So we'll report back with all that information along with the draft of the subboard agreement.
I think that was one of the things we talked about, was the timing of it. So it's just happening, it's got to be done. Not a whole lot we can do about it to make it happen at this point. I think we, going forward, right now, using this one, there's some things we put in place to make sure this type of thing doesn't happen again. When I say don't happen again, with this short notice.
And I would just follow up, and Chris, this is nothing against the town of Mooresville, okay? I love me some town of Mooresville, okay? I just want to be so cautious. And that's the reason I brought up some of these kinds of things, and particularly because, and I understand about not having a manager and changing mayors and all that. I understand all that and wondering who's taking the lead in this, okay? But that's the reason when I was looking through the packet, it's been on somebody's radar screen for over a year now. with that original, with the planning board, and then with what was filed with the Register of Deeds office in Rowan and Iredell County. So somebody has known about, and I guess it caught me off guard, but though it was here. But the real thing is that not having something to compare what we as a third level of government are doing in this, just really, it just strikes me. So, and that's the reason now in retrospect, though it passed, I was gonna say maybe we had a motion to table it so we could get some of these things answered. But thank you for letting me have my little rebuttal. We'll see if I can't get the General Assembly to give me 15. Give y'all some. Seriously.
Feel free to make your own calls.
All right. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 6 now. And I'll now call on Kelly Weston to provide updates on centralized Raleigh relations. And other government engagement activities.
Good evening, everyone. So really the purpose of this item is twofold. One, to give you all a forecast of what to expect in the General Assembly short session. We actually have Chris Wall, our state lobbyist from EQ Strategic, joining us, and I'll turn it over to Chris in just a moment. But the second part will be to update you all on our strategy for our state engagement through the remainder of 2024. So yes, to your point, Mayor, what are they up to in Raleigh? So Chris, I will turn it over to you for that view from Raleigh.
Thanks, Kelly, and thanks for having me this evening, Chairman and Geraldine. So we were with a number of legislators yesterday. The activity in Raleigh has picked up a little bit, coming off of the primaries where it slowed down a good bit heading into last week. And the joint legislative oversight committees are back in full swing. I think we had 4 of them this week. We've got a couple next week, but you can see the activity in Raleigh started to pick back up coming off the elections. The General Assembly is supposed or will start April 25th. That will be the beginning of the short session. Look for things to really pick up that second week in May. The budget process, they are going to, once again, like they did in the long session, they want to get ahead of that in order to keep session as short as possible. We'll come back to that in just a second. But they have already put the edict out to members, talking about the types of projects that they want. They are also doing a really good job of staying on message that money is going to be tighter this year than we have seen in previous years. And one of the big reasons for that is the tax cuts that the General Assembly passed a couple of years ago. Most economists, and it looks like this is going to hold true, predicted some short-term pain for long-term gain, and we're coming up on the short-term pain area. So the budget surpluses that we have seen in the previous couple of years, we do not anticipate. We still think there'll be a couple $100 million surplus that they have to play with outside of the duties that they have to fund on an annual basis. But the amount of spending that they do on earmarked projects, probably not going to be as robust this year. I still encourage everyone to submit your budget requests and to work with your legislators on getting those funds, because there will be some funds, just they're doing a good job of saying that the money's going to be tighter this year. We with Centralina have begun the budget process. Geraldine and Kelly and I had a meeting with Jason Sane yesterday to kick off the budget meetings for Centralina. We're in a good place. Centralina's request kind of made it right up to the finish line last year. Well, unfortunately, we didn't get our request in, but we have some assurances from chairs that we are cautiously optimistic that those budget requests will be honored this year. And Kelly and Geraldine and I have identified the list of folks that will be our champions, not only on our budget requests, but also on our Connect Beyond work as well, which I think we'll get into in a little bit. But look for the other thing that they're really staying on message is the session being short. I tend to disagree. If you look historically, the sessions just continue to get longer and longer every year. You know, you can make the argument that we're in election year and members need to be back in their district running for office. But with the exception of 2 races, I can tell you every single race right now who's going to win in November. And with that, pretty much, you know, the need to be back in the district is not as great as maybe they would let you on to believe. And I also think that North Carolina is going to be ground zero for the presidential election and our governor's race, extremely high profile, both races. Probably see record amounts of money coming into the state for those two. Really, the only way that down ballot candidates can get their message out, because the airways will be taken up, is being in Raleigh and working through Raleigh, because they will be covered in that. So there's some incentives for them to be in a little longer than I think they're talking about, but they're doing a good job of staying on message, saying it's going to be a short session. One thing I will mention, I didn't mention, back to the revenue standpoint, obviously there was a lot of talk and work on casino expansion and gaming expansion in the short session. We've been told that is going to take a back seat in short session. We do not anticipate gaming legislation moving through or casino expansion moving through. We do think that video lottery terminals will be something that the General Assembly takes up, which will impact local governments and their revenue streams, and obviously just all the ins and outs of dealing with the internet cafes and sweepstakes parlors. So we anticipate that happening, but casinos are most likely not going to happen till the short session, but it will come back because they want those revenue streams. So Kelly, I will turn it back over to you or answer any questions anybody has.
Thank you, Chris. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to see if the board has any questions for Chris.
Absolutely. No question.
Martha Sue, you're going to let me off with no questions?
I'm holding off with Chris, I've still got some other stuff on the sidebar for you.
Okay.
I saw some of your buddies though up in DC yesterday.
Did you tell them I said hello? I was in DC yesterday.
Right, so nothing else?
Thank you, Chris. So did want to, Mr. Chairman, just kind of quickly update the board on our strategy for the remainder of the short session. So we actually brought this approach to the board, if you'll recall, at your November and your January executive board meetings. You all endorsed this approach. We are actually currently in phase 2 of this sort of 2-phase approach. So between now and the end of the short session, our focus is really going to be on relationship building. So again, kind of outreach to candidates, those meetings that Chris mentioned, the one that we had with Representative Sane yesterday, we'll continue to do that. But really, we want to also kind of talk about what we're going to be doing for the remainder of 2024.
Technical difficulty. Oh, there you go.
So kind of the short session and beyond. So there are going to be some opportunities for engagement with you all and our legislators, and I'll touch on those in a little bit more detail in just a moment. But a couple of things I wanted to highlight here are kind of at the September and the November executive board meetings. Really wanting to have discussions with you all around priorities. So we have had some forecasting of priorities that have come up in conversations with you all at your past 2 meetings, but we really want to kind of dive into those in September and then kind of finalize those priorities for the long session in November. So we're kind of already, even though the short session hasn't started yet, we're already looking ahead to the long session in 2025. And so I mentioned a couple of opportunities for engagement, and we really want to make sure that we're providing those opportunities for you all to have some elected to elected engagement. So first, we'd like to begin those meetings with our individual legislative champions. As Chris mentioned, we have identified some folks that we want to kind of really work with in the General Assembly to be our champions on specific priorities. So as we have those meetings with them, we want to invite you all to attend those if they are representatives of your districts, if you are in their districts. At the same time, if you all are having your own individual meetings with your legislators, please let us know. We'd be happy to provide you all with some talking points to take with you to those meetings. If there's time for you to talk about some Centralina priorities, we can definitely equip you with those. And also, if you are interested in scheduling some meetings with your legislators, we'd be happy to make some connections and assist with scheduling there as well. And then Geraldine mentioned the October Board of Delegates meeting earlier. That's our annual celebration. So we'd like to invite our legislative delegation to that meeting as well for some opportunity for you all to network with them as well. So wanted to kind of get your thoughts on these engagement opportunities for you all to connect with your electeds.
It's great. I think we need more of it. Then we can ask them about how they're giving away money.
And back to Chris's comment about, he can about tell this Chris Wall, not Chris Carney, but Chris Wall's comment about of the contested races in the General Assembly, he could about tell what's going to happen. In our area, when we look at, just a reminder that as crazy as this sounds, within our 9-county region, we have 40% of the General Assembly within our 9 counties. So if we can't get it done here, okay, it can't be done. So we really need to capitalize on that. But to Chris's comment, some of us already know that changes are going to occur within our House or Senate district, okay? And we already, we already know who they're gonna be. We don't need to wait, because if we know that the primary was, where the competition was, then I think we don't even wait till then. I think we go ahead and reach out, either you all or us, and make that conversation and start that relationship. Because once January gets here, they're gone, particularly new people who have not been up there as elected folks. So we need to capitalize on it now. I know my member of the House is going to change. And he told me he was hoping it would be the current member with 3 months in short session, but he looked and he said, it might be longer. So, but I think those ones that we already know are changing and we already know who's won, we don't need to wait for sure.
And that's exactly what we're planning to do. That's part of our strategy, is to really kind of focus or start with our safe folks.
Yes, and those are different, yes.
And so we're looking to start that next month.
Very good.
Anybody else? All right, anything else coming?
That's
All
all.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. All right, moving right along to item 7. Our in-focus discussion, regional infrastructure innovation. So the last thing on the agenda for tonight, and I'll now call on our Deputy Executive Director, Michelle Haynes, to share a briefing on how we can all take advantage of the initiative.
Good evening. In the interest of time, be very brief, but just wanted to highlight 2 programs that you should know about, and you'll be hearing more about them in the coming month and actually year. So because we're talking infrastructure, I thought what better way to tee this up than looking at our region's growth in the past, how we've grown, where we are today, and where we look to be in the future. A lot of little people there. Each little person represents 150 people, 150,000 people. The key takeaway here is by 2050, we're due to grow by another 1.2 million people. And that, when you envision that, it just brings home the point that we have to be innovative in how we grow. We have to be mindful of the money that's coming to us in whatever way that we're spending it in a way where our investments are going to grow themselves. Because there's never enough money to hit all of the needs that we have. So we have been fast growing, we're continuing to be fast growing. And what we're finding, and you know this, that even if your community is not growing as fast as one of your neighbors, a county or 2 over, There's shared impacts. And those shared impacts are in the form of transportation and housing, our labor force, the training that labor force needs, water quality, air quality, open space, all these things are shared. And so as the growth makes its way across the region, and some folks are going faster than others, we always want to stop, pause, and see how we can learn from our fast-growing peers. What policies did they put in place? What investments did they make? What made a difference? And then, I guess over the last year, as we've been engaging our communities, not only with the 55th anniversary, but also with you, our board of delegates and our regional managers, the things that keep coming up over and over is that we have a ton of infrastructure needs in this region. And you know it, you feel it, you hear it every day. So again, we're going to have to be pretty innovative in how we address those things. And so Centralina has been behind the scenes doing a few things, going after some grants, looking at some new programming to really help the region be innovative and to help our local governments take advantage of some things that are happening on the federal level, but also the state level as well. And so again, two programs that we wanted to touch base on. One is called Regional Infrastructure Accelerator. That sounds really wonky, but it's USDOT. Okay, so the United States Department of Transportation has designated Centralina as a regional infrastructure accelerator. And I'll tell you about what that means in just a second. And then the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant, you've heard a little bit about that. We talked a little bit about the planning of that. But we're in a phase now where we're hoping to get money, right? So that's where we want to talk about, right? How's that money going to come down, however it flows, and how's it going to get to our local governments? So I'm going to start off with the Regional Infrastructure Accelerator, and then my colleague Jason is going to touch on the climate program. But again, just as an overview, we've been given that designation, which is great. It's a 2-year designation. We actually have a staff member that will be starting Monday to help fulfill this from the federal standpoint. But what I want to talk about is how it's going to help you. So they really ask us to take care of 3 key components. And one of those is infrastructure finance innovation. So a lot of communities across the nation have used different financing techniques to get their bridges, their roads, their transit, those types of things, to get that done. We need to bring that here. Like, what are they doing? We've all heard of the P3, public-private partnerships, design, build. But how do we do that? And who's doing it well already in the region? How do we learn from that? And so this position is really going to help us kind of drill down and provide some additional details, so education around how to do that. You often see, we'll get a request to do letters of support for big grants. So one of them is like the RAISE grant, that's the big federal USDOT asking for the big money. We'll get a request for a letter over here and a request for a letter over here, and they'll be kind of adjacent communities. And we're glad to support those, but my goodness, if y'all could have done our project together, it probably would have won. So let's take a look at that. I mean, it's not a sure thing, but let's talk about on a regional scale, all the MPOs, all the transit organizations, what are those things that rise to the top that are just no-brainers that we're going to get that money to come in? That's what we want to talk about. The second piece is project facilitation for major regional road projects, regional transportation projects. There's obviously there's a lot of needs. There's some things that are in the hopper right now. One happens to be doing some design work for the Lynx light rail, which would link 2 counties, basically headed from 485 west over to Belmont. So that brings in 2 MPOs. It brings in multiple transit agencies. It brings in 2 of our major metropolitan centers. So there's a lot of regional pieces there. And so that was one of the projects that rose to the top. The other is you've probably heard a little bit about some of this passenger rail and money that's coming to North Carolina. So, whether it's Charlotte to Kings Mountain or Salisbury to Asheville, those are in our region. People are kind of, getting kind of hype about that. What does that mean? What do we need to be doing now? Are we going to have to raise local funds? What's the process? This designation is going to help us be the one to carry that information out to you and make sure you're well informed. The third part is, I know you see this at the local level, but transportation and land use are linked. And we can do one thing on the land use side, and that's going to create needs. We can do something on the transportation side, and that's going to impact how we grow. So they are just so linked. And it's good to let people know about that, to understand those links. And so the federal government feels so strongly about it. They're like, we would like to help y'all with some educational components. So you heard of Centralina Learns. They want to invest to say, can you do some additional ones about transportation projects, about how that impacts land use and vice versa? So this is all going to be great for your staff. So we're really looking forward to that. That's kind of in a nutshell. Again, it's at the very beginning. It's a 2-year process, but we're really hoping that one of the first major initiatives we can do is actually bring some of those folks down from DC and have them actually come here in the region, do a half-day, full-day workshop to talk to us about what's still out there and how can we get it. Okay, so let's now go to the next one. I'll turn it over to Chase.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Michelle. I'll be brief as well, but I think just a couple of big takeaways for this program. We see the title and the naming, but I think what for us in this region is important is this is really given us a chance and an opportunity to look locally at what are those needs we have around real focused activities that we're doing. So energy efficiency, resiliency. So I think the big name sometimes can be a bit misleading. This is really giving us that opportunity to say that if you can look at these dates and do the quick numbers on those, to say that it's been an accelerated timeline is an understatement. This has gone very quickly, the first two especially. So what that first date has really enabled us to do though is hear from the region. It's been quick and it's been a bit rushed, but we did get a good chance through a couple of summits and focus groups in each county, both virtual, hybrid as well, and so forth, to gather a lot of information about what are those projects that maybe are long-term of interest. Yeah, definitely gathered those, but also what are those near-term projects that might be a little bit more shovel-ready, which allowed us to then go to this April 1st deadline and talk with the three entities in North Carolina that received funds through this program. So state of North Carolina, the MSA for the Charlotte region, Centralina, and the MSA for the Triangle region, about what can we do to give ourselves collectively the best chance to bring the best dollars through this implementation grant back to our regions in the state. And that was to work collaboratively and to go together. So we are doing that right now in real time, gathering all that information that we heard through the planning first phase, putting that together and bringing our best ideas to put together for the state proposal. I will say that for our region, transportation and buildings has risen to the top in terms of major sector areas that were important to our area. So we're hoping to have a little bit more on that real soon. What we do intend to do as well is put together some more communication materials. So one-pagers and other details as we get the ideas kind of run through the governor's office and all the other folks that need to review the draft that's going together by the 1st. And then at least let everyone know, hey, this is where we landed on all this. And then finally, we can come back and it seems like summer of 25, that's way off, but we're going to have a year to kind of really take a quick deep breath, but then do more deeper engagement with everyone about all kinds of issues and topics that were brought up already. So, and as far just mentioned, as far as the implementation grant, we're hearing that announcements should be made by summer of this year. So we'll at least know whether we were awarded. And then from there, more importantly, this is an overall 4-year program. So we've got multiple years to kind of carry this out. And the implementation grant, once received, is a 5-year. Here. So rushed right now, a little bit harried, but hopefully we'll have some good announcements to share about local projects that can make a difference. Again, in transportations and buildings. And certainly also all types and sizes of communities and all types of situations, industrial, multifamily, multimodal, so biking, pedestrian, all, you name it, all the way across the board. So we hope to bring a lot of ideas back to the region. So for that, turn it back to Charlie. Did you have any? Okay. And of course, any questions we're happy to take.
Any questions? Okay, thank you all very much. All right, so moving right along. Come for our closing comments. There will be closing comments before we hear from Geraldine. All right, thanks, Geraldine.
No closing comments for me. I appreciate all that healthy dialogue tonight. Mr. Mayor, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
And we'll be following up on this item in April.
Great, thanks. And I just have a few, there are a number of upcoming events that I encourage board members to take advantage of or share information back with your manager colleagues. Centralina is hosting economist Mark Venter for a regional economic briefing on March 27th at noon. The session is designed to equip elected officials with an economic forecast ahead of our budget process. On April 25th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., there will be a Centralina Learn session on aging sensitivity and age-friendly communities. Also, on May 7th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., Centralina's series on grant writing and capacity building continues with a session on how to tell your smart story in grant applications. And then our next board meeting, executive board meeting, will be held on April 10th, held here at the Centralina office. A quorum is essential for this meeting, so please be on the lookout for meeting information and reminders from her side. And now that we've reached the end of our agenda, there being no further business to come before this board, I declare this meeting adjourned.